Hey there, YouTube. Welcome on back to Artichoke Dip. And I'm back at it. So, I guess I should get this right out of the way before we even begin. If you're enjoying these videos, you like these videos, you like watching my playthroughs and following along with this story, click that like button or click the subscribe button followed by the bell icon, and every time a new video is uploaded, you will not miss one. So, with that out of the way, I wanted to delve into this part first. I don't like leaving loose ends. And as this bandit over here, as we can see, I'll move the game board so you can see, has helped our adventurers escape the nightmare of this tavern out into the world. It's at that point, get a Sawyer coffee here, as he watches them depart through the now hole in the wall up here, going to the outside world. He looks at it and he just kind of shakes his head in more and less like he just can't believe what he just saw. And he takes the gold that Carnu had gave him and he puts it in his coin pouch. He then turns his head and turns his attention back towards the other room and grins. At that point, the bandit makes his way across the room, grabbing the tapestry and ripping it down from the ceiling where it was mounted, which allows more light to illuminate into the room, where you can see now the now dead cultist on the floor a little bit better. Yeah, he's got a lantern over here, but more light, all the better. So it is at that point that our NPC bandit approaches the now corpse of this cultist. He looks down and he says, "No gold, eh? We'll see about that." He at that point starts going through pouches and everything he has on him, looking for any type of valuables. So, let's, how do I want to do this? I know what I want to do. I know how I want to wrap this up. I've been thinking about this, and yeah. So as he's rummaging through basically this corpse, this headless corpse laying in its own pool of blood, he finds some gold coins he greedily pockets, and he sees this ring on his finger. Although he has no idea if it's a magical ring or not, all he knows is it probably fetch him some coin, if anything. The problem is, it's a little too small and won't come off his finger. So at that point, he takes out his dagger and he starts sawing at the finger to take the ring. Unknown to our NPC here, while the cultist was upstairs in the tavern, and where he set this hourglass, as the sand ran out the bottom, it was actually on a, if you want to think about it, like a scale system. Once the sand ran out, the scale tipped, triggering another door. As he's working to get the finger off the hand, he hears this door right here has opened. Our NPC has his back to him like that, and he stops momentarily and shrugs his shoulders and goes back to taking his finger off. Now, this is the part it's going to get interesting. I have decided I kind of wanted to, how shall I put this? It would just be wrong to end that on a note and not at least getting a glimpse of what the cultist's pet was. Wouldn't you say? I mean, I know I would want to know. And I'm sure you fine folks out there would like to know too. So let's play through that and see how this works out. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull, I got the bandit's NPC card here. And I'm going to roll and see if he notices anything. It'll be a perception check. It'll be against his wisdom, which he doesn't have any bonuses to. So let's roll a 10-sider and see where our DC falls. A 2, so it'll be a difficulty class 12. Let's see how that rolls out. A 15. Just as he finally gets the finger off and he pulls the ring off this nasty bloodied finger, he throws the finger to the basement or tavern cellar floor, and he takes the ring and he grins a little bit as he's looking at it, and he puts it in his pouch. At that point, a foul odor begins to fill the air. Now, I'm going to have to roll against his constitution because I have to see if he retches. And let's see where the DC of that is. DC 14. So let's see what he gets. He gets a +2 to that con bonus. Okay, he rolled a 15. He made it. He covers his face and he's like, oh! And as he turns around, he sees this huge 7-foot tall nightmare that comes basically slowly walking like a slow motion shuffle. The sound of almost like creaking leather as he sees these large, almost look like skeletal type of hands with dried flesh around them, and dark black eyes, black as night, comes out of the area. As he turns, he makes eye contact with this thing. At this point, we have to find out if this NPC is frightened or not. And let's see what our DC class is going to be for that. A 4, we're going to say a 14. I'm going to roll against his... I'm going to go with his intelligence on this one. Oh, he rolls a 1. Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay. This is too good of an opportunity to pass up here. I have to consult the Cryptonomicon for this one. Let's see what happens. All right. Oh man, some of this stuff is very brutal. So I'm in the undead, the variant rule of undead and severed heads. Let's see what we get here. Let me re-roll that again. There we go. 18. Okay. Oh man. So it goes without saying, he is frozen in fear, and he's just staring at this monstrosity moving towards him. As it shuffles in, its huge skeletal arm comes in and right into its chest, knocking him back into the wall and flat onto his back. The creature at that point begins to move over the top of him. To his horror of what he's getting ready to see, its chest cavity opens up and its ribs almost spreading open like a large monstrous mouth of sharp teeth open. The remnants of a human, or what's left of it, falls out into like a mucus slug onto the cellar floor of just digested. It's basically skeletal with a little bit of muscle tissue left, but not much else other than that. The creature then reaches out with its large hands and it's going to get 2 attacks for that. We might as well roll those right now. Oh, plus 11 for each one. Ouch. Oh, man. 17 and an 18. He has an AC 15. There is like no denying that. Both claws grab a hold of him and lunge him in towards the creature. I am going to give him 1 chance to roll to see if he will be able to try to defend himself, not with a weapon necessarily, but see if he can grab the lantern and maybe smash it at the creature or something like that to try to save himself. So let's see how that's going to roll out. Now, the fact that he has been frightened and he's got these 2 mammoth claws grabbing a hold of him, dragging him into this digesting cavity, basically. He's going to have disadvantage at this. And let's see where we're going to set the DC level. I rolled a 9 on a 10-sider. That's going to be a 19. And it's going to be against his dexterity, which he has a +3 to his attribute. So let's roll that. He gets disadvantage. Huh. A 20 and a 14. We got to take the lower of the 2, which is 14, 15, 16, 17. Yeah. Unfortunately, as he looks out of the corner of his eye and he's reaching for the lantern to grab it, a hold of something, he's knocks it off center. The lantern at that point falls over to its side. The oil falls out and begins to combust onto the floor. But unfortunately for him, it does not do much. Let's see how much damage he's actually going to sustain from this. 1d6 for each arm. Okay, he has 20 hit points, and he just took 7 hit points from the mammoth arms, plus let me roll for the claw as well. The first one, that'd be 1 extra, so that'd be 8 hit points, so he's now down to 11. But this creature, unfortunately, has a special attack, Energy Drain. And, well, let's figure out. I'm just going to treat Energy Drain as if like his life force is just being basically sucked right out of him, because that's basically what it is. And, dang man, this is going to be... Living creatures hit by this attack or spectral hand ability receive 1 negative level. Oh, so, oh wow, okay, so I'm going to roll a 1d10. Looking at the way that they built this NPC, I'm sorry, 1d8, he has 10d8. Let's see how many hit points he has lost from the energy drain. On top of the 11 he's already lost already. 1. So it's a total of 12. Okay, so as he's drawn into this chest cavity and his life energy is being sucked out of him, he screams out in agonizing pain. And it's at that point the chest cavity begins to close, crushing him in, and he's just screaming at the top of his lungs. Unfortunately, this area is starting to engulf in flame, and this creature is taking on a very nightmarish sight, at the say to least. And on top of all that, of him having his life drained out of him and being crushed, I'm gonna roll 2 more d6 for fire damage. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's pretty much at that point to say his final moments are spelled out, being crushed with the energy draining out of his body, and what's left of him to remember, I guess you could say, is the feeling of intense scorching heat. Now, here is the other interesting thing about this. Before I end this off, to tie up this little loose end right here, we have to find out, was his scream loud enough for anybody up in the tavern to hear? Let's break out the oracle and see what the oracle has to say about that. I'm gonna roll a 20-sider. 10. No, nobody heard it, but let's find out what that is all about. 4. A fact that the hero thinks they know is actually wrong. Okay. I think I know how I want to play that off. I think right here I'm going to leave this scenario off to tie up this loose end with this NPC. Kind of close out this particular encounter, if you will, here in the tavern. So the tavern people did not hear the screams coming from the cellar. But something has occurred with our heroes. A fact the hero thinks they know is actually wrong. And we are going to get into that in our next scenario. Alright. Okay, so the characters have made it outside the tavern safely. Well, mostly. They're exhausted and they cannot really handle much more before exhaustion is going to overtake them. Rangrim screams at Carnu. He's like, follow me, keep up. And Carnu is just utilizing all the strength that he has left to be able to hold Merrick up on his shoulders like a sack of potatoes and is trying to keep pace with Rangrim. As they run through the streets of Longsaddle. Let's see how the people react to this sight as they pass by. As they pass through the streets, they are more or less go about their business. They look, but not like of overly concern. Evidently, things like this must happen quite often in these parts. I guess it's not a very good neighborhood. Anyways, as they're running, the only thing Rangram is thinking is finding shelter, somewhere that they can lay low for an amount of time to be able to formulate a plan to get out of this situation, because this is not a good situation. They're just about exhausted. Merrick is on his deathbed. Not to mention the turmoil that's taking place in the tavern cellar right now. And unfortunately, everybody in this town, they don't know who they can or cannot trust. So, as Rangram, Merrick, and Carnu make their way out of the market area of Longsaddle over into more of where the private dwellings, we'll say, are, he sees two cottages, houses, however you would like to refer to them. And he notices this one. Well, let me see. Let me do this to Fairway. I can't just keep saying he notices. Let me roll and see if he actually, which one he picks. First things first. Let's check the Oracle and see if one of these two houses are in fact empty. 18. Yes. Yes, they are. Okay. So, he's going to make a quick decision based on his gut feeling. Not thought, but just quick. That one. And we're going to use wisdom, which is going to give him a +2. And let's see. I'm going to roll a 10-sider to set DC class here for us to roll against. A 15. Let me see if he gets that. Oh, right on. Rolled a 15 right on. Don't even need the bonus. Okay. As he looks at the two cottages, something just tells him that one. That's the one right there. He heads towards that way. And he puts his shoulder into it, getting ready to bust through the door if he can. Now, let's see. Let me roll my percentage die and see what the percentage of that door being locked. 37%. It's very low. Okay. So, with that in mind, I'm going to have the base DC 10. 10 right across the board. And using his strength, and I'm going to give him a +4 to this. He rolls a 7. Okay, so as he goes to lunge towards the door, he falls short. As he hits the door, he's kind of fallen off balance and falls to his butt, if you will. And as he's getting ready to pull himself back up, to at that point get his weapon out or something else that we can use to take that door down. The door at that point opens. What is behind that door? So, this will be the zoomed in image of the cottage. Let's take a look here. As the door stands open, Rangrim, at that point, sees a inquisitive person looking out and says, hello, can I help you? I wonder, let me see how he wants to... Let me set a... Well, let me see here. I have drawn an NPC card. Oh, this ought to be interesting. Okay, so this NPC, his character classes, he's a druid, and his skills are medicine, which I mean, hey, we need that right now. Nature, perception. He also has passive perception of 14. And there's, anyway, spells that he's able to cast, which I'm not going to get into those too much. I'm more focused on the healing side of it. But here's the thing. Not everybody is who they seem to be. So the first thing we have to find out with this NPC is he truly a decent NPC, or is he another cultist that's just waiting to basically see us to our doom? That's what we have to find out right now. So let's go to the Oracle and let's see what we're going to get here. A 2. No, he is not a cultist. That is good. That is really good. That is, yeah, that's what we need right now. Rangrim at that point stands and he's like, ugh. He says, please, we need help. My friend is injured. I'm afraid he's going to die. He says, please shelter us just for, we will not bring you any trouble, but we need help. I'm going to roll. He's got passive perception of 14. Let's see where he falls. If really sense if he's in danger or if he feels as if this is a trap. And with Rangrim's charisma, he gets a +1. So let me see where he falls with his. A 2. Oh, that ain't good. That'd usually be a 3. The druid just looks at him and he's like, sorry, I don't have any time for riffraff at this hour. I have important things to tend to, and I have customers that I'm very busy right now. Please go away. He gets ready to close the door. I'm going to see if Rangrim can Fuck it. He's going to kick the door open. That's what he's going to do. I get a +4 to my strength. The door is open. His strength, he has no modifier to his strength roll. So this is just going to be 2 20-siders rolled straight out. Highest one wins. Of course, I get a bonus. So the druid, he's got a 12. Rangrim rolls a 13 plus his 4 bonus. So at that point, Rangrim steps up and he kicks the door, forcefully slamming it wide open. He steps up closer to the gentleman and he says, "I don't think you heard me." He says, "My friend is injured and I need help." Let's see how he perceives it that time. Okay. That time he can tell by looking at Rangrim's face and just the sheer expression of terror, if you will. Well, not terror, but that's not the right word. Worry. The sheer amount of worry in his eyes that he is in dire straits. He needs help. It's at that point he looks out and he says, "Very well." He's like, "Quickly, come in. Hurry." Rangrim comes in and motions to Carnu. Carnu walks into the doorway, and with all the strength that he has left, he carefully lowers Merrick off his shoulder onto the floor. Where, at that point, Carnu takes a knee, and he's winded. He's just breathing real heavy. He's been just, at that point, pushed to max physical ability that he has at this point. The druid slams the door shut. And let's set out the layout of the room so we can put everything into perspective as to what's where and what is what. Inside of here, there is a countertop right here. It almost looks like a magical store, but there are various different types of potions and herbs that are lying on this surface. Hanging from the ceiling in here, there are also different types of herbs and plants that are hanging and drying. Over here in the corner, there is a fire that's burning, and there is a really pleasant aroma that seems to be coming out of this kettle. It's at that point that the druid kneels down over Merrick, and he's assessing his injuries. And he says, "Oh my God," he says, "your friend, he is very, very, very injured. He could possibly die." He says, I have a cure here. I'm going to give to him right away." He says, "But you have to understand." He says, it's not cheap. I will have to have something in return." Rangrim says, "We got gold. Don't worry. If gold is what you want, gold is what you shall receive." He said, "Okay, that's a start." The druid gets up and he moves over to the counter. He is at that point grabbing different vials of liquids, and he is mixing them. And as quickly as he can, he walks over with this purplish looking liquid. He looks over at Rangrim and says, "I'm going to need help with your friend if you want him to live." Now, at this point, I'm going to have to see how Rangrim is going to react to this. So, I'm going to roll against, he gets a +1 to his charisma. I'm going to let me set a DC for that. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set a DC. I'm going to roll a D10. Let's see where this DC is at. It'll be an 11. And he rolls a 4. Okay. So Rangram doesn't quite trust him yet. He knows he has to... He knows Merrick is going to die if he does not have help. And he understands that he's not qualified to heal him. But in the back of his mind, he's worried about this vial he has. And Rangram says, "What is that in your hand? Are you not going to poison him, are you?" The druid looks over at Rangram, and with almost a look of surprise and almost of beguile, if you will, he says, "What do you mean, poison him?" He says, "You came to me for help. If you want him to live," he says, "then help me. Otherwise, he will die." At that point, Rangram walks around and he says, "Okay, what do you need me to do?" He says, "I need you to support his head, tilt his head back so I can pour this liquid down, and we have to get it into him in order for this medicine to work." Rangram follows his orders. He pours the liquid in a little bit at a time. He massages his throat so his throat muscles will swallow the medicine into his stomach. As he's administering the medicine, at that point, Carnu trying to... Let me see how Carnu is handling all this, because he's still dealing with the after effects of that spell that went completely wrong. I'm going to roll against his constitution, and I'm going to see what the DC is. It's going to be an 18. This ought to be interesting. Okay. Oh, yeah, he doesn't get it. Carnu, as he stands up and leans against the counter, and he's bracing himself, catching his breath and looking around, he slips for a moment, and when both of them are talking, he screams out a babble of just undescribable, ununderstandable type of words. And it's at that point the druid looks over at him and he's like, "Oh, whoa, 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 whoa," because he hasn't seen his face yet. He says, he's a drow. Rangram says, "Yes, he's a drow. He's my friend. He will not hurt you. I promise. I promise you." He says, "I trusted you. Will you not trust me?" Okay, now at that, let's see how the druid NPC is going to react to that question. He has a +0 to his charisma. I'm going to set the DC of that. I roll my 10-sider. A 2. Add the 10 to it, which will be a 12. Let's see how he reacts to that. A 20. Wow. He looks at Rangram, and he can see the sincerity in Rangram's face, in his eyes. And he looks back over at Carnu, and he says, "Very well, very well." He says, "I understand." He said, "Absolutely." He says, "Help me get back to giving him the medicine." He says, "Now, what is wrong with your friend?" As he's pouring more of the medicine in and getting it into Merrick, Rangram explains to him what had happened. And he says he went to do magic, and the only thing I saw was this burst of, it was blue light around him. And the next thing I know, he was just, he's been like this. He says, "I don't know if it's permanent or, I don't even know if this is part of a spell." And the druid is just like, very well. He said, well, let's get your friend here taken care of, he says, and then we'll take a look at him and see if there's something we may be able to do for him. After they administer the medicine to Merrick, the druid says, we have to get him on a bed. We have to have him somewhere to where he can rest. He needs to completely rest for the evening. So at that point, he tells Ragnar and Carnu, here, help me, move these grain bags. At that point, he arranges some grain bags and I thought I had some of those. Oh well. He arranges grain bags over here, and they place Merrick in like a makeshift bed to where his head is supported and he can begin to heal next to the warmth of this fire. The druid at that point, given all the craziness that just went on, he's like, oh my god, he's like, I almost forgot. He says, anybody can walk in here. Let me take care of this door. He walks over to the door and he takes a large timber and drops it on the back side of the door to lock it. He turns around and he says, don't worry. He says, I'm not locking you in. I'm trying to lock the other people out. He says, don't take this offensively, but there's been a lot of strange people in this area lately and a lot of strange things happening. He said, unfortunately, at one time, this town was a very, very popular spot for trading, and there was a lot of good things that used to happen in this town, but over the last couple of years that has changed. He says, but there's still a lot of good people in this town, but they don't have a healer. That's why I'm here. He said, not too many people really know about me. And he said, and if the town constable found out, he would probably burn this place to the ground, which is why I am where I am at, and why, well, I try to keep it a secret, you see. I bring them herbal remedies and cures. They pay me in gold and other supplies that helps my people through the winter months when food can be scarce. So, as you can see, besides gold, it's a start to help, but unfortunately, some of the ingredients it takes to make these medicines are very rare, and some areas that you have to go to collect them, it takes a fair amount of risk and time, if you get my point. Rangram just says, aye. So at that point, Carnu looks over at him. He can hear every word he's saying. He's trying to keep his mouth shut, and he nods to him in agreement. He says, therefore, he says, first things first. He says, you guys look like you could use some water. He goes over and he fetches him water, gives him a big tankard of water, and at that point, he asks them, what is your business here in Longsaddle, if I may ask? He goes, I can tell you look like the adventurous type, but I can only guess. Rangram tells him the story. The tale about how a divine intervention, a vision he's had about this town, calling to him, and something important that he must do is the reason why they are traveling. From the descriptions he describes to him, he says, it sounds like you're describing Red Larch to me. He says, although I don't know if I would want to travel there, but he said, well, if you say that his God has given him a vision, then he says, who are we to meddle or disobey the gods? He says, I understand He said, if at all possible, we should wait just before nightfall. I will sneak you out of this town, and I can set you on a path that, or at least maybe find somebody that could set you on a path to reach where you have to go. He said, but until then, he says, maybe you guys should think about getting some rest and seeing to those wounds that you have. He said, meanwhile, let me get back to what I am doing over here. I'm preparing some ingredients. He goes, well, actually, he said, I'm preparing wine. And normally I'm not here, but I decided to come in today and get caught up on some work. It's getting close to the fall season, and unfortunately, besides medicinal, some of my customers, they like the wine I make. So please, he said, make yourselves at home, and I will try to give you the space you need and the quiet time that I can so you may rest. Rangram at that point says, I thank you, friend. He says, but I did not catch your name. He says, my name is Rangram. And he pauses for a moment. Rangram Ironfell. The druid looks back over his shoulder at him. He says, Ironfell, you say? He said, my tribal name is Makakaila. He says, but you can call me Michael. He says, Michael, he goes, Ironfell, you mean, obviously, he goes, I can see you're a dwarf, and I'm no fool, so obviously you're from the Ironfell Kingdom, I would guess. He said, yeah, formally. He says, but I no longer work there. Career changes. He's like, right, career changes, I understand. He says, not that it's any of my business. He says, well, it's nice to meet you, Mr. Rangram Ironfell. And your companion's name? He said, he goes, Carnu, demise. He said, he's a very good friend of mine. I've known him for almost nearly my whole life. He said, nice to meet you, Carnu. Carnu nods to him and sits holding his head, trying to compose himself and trying to just focus on keeping his mouth shut, basically. And he says, and for the one who obviously cannot speak, who's in the worst shape, he goes, yeah, that's Merrick. Yeah, he's also a friend of ours as well. He said, relax. He says, I'm sure he'll pull through. He says, I gave him a very potent dose of medicine. He said, but perhaps this would help you out as well. He reaches up at a shelf above where he's got this boiling pot, we now learn, is this wine that he's making. And he pulls down a couple of small glass vials full of liquid. And he walks over and hands them to him. And he says, here. He says, before we head out and before I forget, he says, you should put these somewhere safe to where they won't get broken. And he hands him 3 vials of red liquid. And Rangram looks at him and he says, what is it? He says, it's a special mixture I made. It speeds in recovery and will maintain your health. He said, I don't think our meeting today was any chance meeting. He says, the gods all have a plan for us, and there's a reason why he says the gods have brought you to me. And I think before your journey is over, you will need these. He says, so please, Rangram Ironfell, He says, put them somewhere safe. Because, he says, I do not have any extra to spare. Rangram says, aye. And he puts them into his backpack. I'm going to pencil that in right here. We're going to put 3 healing potions. One D8. Good enough. All right. I want to see how much time has passed. Everything, they have been relaxing and more or less healing, if you will, to themselves. The druid, Michael, has been attending his duties and getting things prepared to lead them safely out of the village of Longsaddle. It's been 4 hours. If we include the time that it from them leaving the tavern, and all of that leading up to this point, 4 hours has passed. It's at that point that they hear the sounds of bells being rung through the streets. Michael gets a very worried look on his face. Now, I have to roll. I want to see if... let's do it this way. Let's set DC class 18. Because they just met him, so they don't really know him yet. But I want to see if either one of them notice it. And I'm going to use their intelligence ability here. So Carnu gets a +3. He has rolled a 15. He's just kind of he's kind of just spaced out in his mind right now. And I'm going to roll for Rangram here, and he has a +2. Okay, he rolled a 14. He doesn't notice it either. They're just kind of they're kind of stuck within their thoughts right now, trying to reconcile in their minds everything that has just happened. Michael walks over to Carnu and he says, here, he says, drink this. It's going to taste very bitter. And he says, he goes, it's going to taste bad. There's no other way that I can explain it to you. But he says, just drink it down as fast as you can and quickly. At that point, he turns and walks over to a window that faces this way. So he would be walking over to this window over here. As he pulls a dirty drape back and he looks outside, he says very loud, "Oh, by the gods, I can't believe it." And he draws the drape shut. He turns and he says, "The tavern. Oh my God," he says, "the tavern, it's on fire." Rangram's like, "Huh? The tavern? What do you mean? What do you mean?" I want to see if he can detect anything in his voice, as if he's being deceptive or trying to hide something. So let's go into that. And, well, you know what? Instead of rolling a DC, I'm just going to roll on the Oracle. Does Michael notice anything out of the ordinary with the way that Rangram reacted to that? He rolled a 9. No, but Okay. It's at that point that he doesn't, the way Rangram reacted to it, and he's like, what do you mean? The tavern's on fire. Almost like he could detect a sense of panic in his voice, almost terror. He tells him, I think our time is up and we should move and we should get out of here now. He says, I don't think we can delay any longer. I wanted to wait till a little bit later, but he says, I feel as if we don't go now. Now is the perfect diversion. We have to leave. He said, gather your friend, and he says, I will gather up a few things quickly. He says, we leave within, he says, 10 minutes. At that point, they put themselves back together. Carnu walks over and carefully picks up Merrick and hoists him up on his shoulders. Like a bag of potatoes, basically, if you will. And at that point, the druid has finished gathering what he needs. They walk over to the door, and he unlocks it. He opens it slowly and looks out to see if the coast is clear. Now, let me roll on the oracle chart. Is there anything out here that they're going to have to worry about? A 7. No, but there's always that. Let me see. Okay, that's cool. He twisted a relationship between people in the situation. It's at that point he says, follow me. He says, stay closely, and he says, we are going to head directly due west, straight out to the wooded areas. He says, I know some secret paths out that way that we can take, and we will be safe. Trust me. He says, but we have to be quick. At that point, he slips out. Rangren follows behind him, followed by Carnu and Merrick. As they are making their way through these streets of Longsaddle, heading towards the tree line, they can hear some of the townsfolk screaming, look, adventurers, they can help, they can help. As they're running west, further west, to get out of this area. It's the perfect diversion. The tavern is here, and it is just engulfed in flame. Thick, black Anchorage smoke is just billowing off of it, and the flames are just rolling. Now, I know how. Oh yeah. Okay, this is how it's going to work. I'm going to set a DC class here. Oh, it's pretty high. 19, but it is what it is. Okay, and I'm going to roll 3 20-siders. I want to see if any of them notice this. Okay, so 17 for Rangram. He's on the top, and I'm going to use his intelligence. 2, 17, 18, 19. He notices it. This one is for the druid. He does not notice it, and the 5 is for Carnu. He does not notice it. Okay, so as they are passing the tavern, trying to divert around as best as they can to get out of Longsaddle, they can feel the scorching heat coming off the building as Rangram turns his attention just quickly and looks over in the area of the fire. The outer shell of the tavern is crumbling and burning away. He can hear screams of people who have been caught inside the tavern in their last moments. But the most horrifying thing that he's trying to comprehend is within the flames, and some of the townsfolk that are surrounding us are trying to throw dirt and water and whatever else they can do to try to contain this blaze. He sees this nightmarish large skeletal looking figure thing that is just lumbering through the flame, and it sends chills down his dwarven spine. It's at that point he screams, "Hurry, hurry up," and almost begins to outrun the druid, not knowing even where he's going. The Now, within what seems like a lifetime, they reach the safety of the tree line of the forest of leading out of Longsaddle. And I think at that point, I'm going to leave it off on this, and I'm going to pick up on this later. But I think this is a good ending point to this story. All right.